News, which means I handle the opinion content for the newspaper. And we started these forums and panel discussions back in the fall of 2018. We try to do them on a monthly basis with a new topic every time. This month it's about education. That's the latest topic of our Beacon Project. So the Beacon Project is a journalism initiative that we launched last year that on a quarterly basis goes in-depth on one issue that Savannah is grappling with as the city approaches the 300th anniversary of its founding in 2033. We publish a magazine. My directions say to hold it up, so I'm going to hold it up. And we have a website, savannahnow.com/beacon. So today's Brews and Views is an extension of the Beacon, and I have with me today a panel of experts to help us unpack education and where we need to focus our attention over the next 13 years. I'll go ahead and introduce our guest. Immediately to my right is Michael O'Neill, who is the founder and executive director of Parent University. O'Neill founded Parent University more than 20 years ago to help parents understand how to promote and support learning in their children. He's helped thousands of families and is without question the foremost expert on the challenges parents face in helping their kids on the education front. Michael, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
My far right is Jeff Cole. Jeff is the driving force behind Savannah's emerging purpose-built community in East Savannah. It's modeled on an initiative that launched in Atlanta's East Lake community about 2 decades ago. Most of you know East Lake, that's where the golf course is, and the community around it has really transformed over the last 2 decades, and it's a lot to do with this whole purpose-built approach. Purpose-built communities combine quality housing, cradle-to-college educational intervention, and wraparound services, such as those that promote health and well-being. In Savannah, the purpose-built community will be anchored by the East Side Early Learning Center that will soon become a reality. I believe it had money in the SPLOST, right, Jeff? So it's coming up. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
To my left is Amy Condon, who is the lead reporter on the Beacon Project and will basically try to make me look halfway intelligent by filling in the blanks. And joining us at some point will be Valerie Cave, who is the executive director. She's coming up the steps now. She's the executive director of elementary and K-8 schools for the Savannah-Chatham County Public School System. She played a significant role in our public schools' push to emphasize early childhood education, including the revamping of the East Broad K-8 school into the Formie School Early Learning Center, which is home to 500 pre-K and kindergarten students. So let's launch right into it and talk about early childhood education. Universal early childhood education. What is the need for that, and can we get there in the next 13 years? Since you came in late, I'm going to push it right on you.
Oh, you're going to push it. Good evening to everyone. Can we get there in the next, how many years?
13 years.
13 years. I do believe that we can get there in the next 13 years. Great strides in Savannah-Chatham County Public Schools, as well as across our county, in terms of opening up more facilities that impact children so that there are a better early childhood care facilities. We're working on our quality ratings across the county to get more of our daycares to have high quality ratings, and then we're providing more professional development to our teachers so that they are actually ready to receive those children. But the area that I think that we need to focus on a little bit more is that birth to 4.
Okay.
What can we do from the womb or before the womb until that child gets to school?
Yeah, because that's important, right? Because the lottery funds don't kick in. The state money doesn't kick in until you're 4 years old.
That's right.
So how are we going to cover that gap? Do you want it to throw it to somebody else, or Jeff? Go ahead.
Yeah, I can't say I know entirely how to cover the gap, but one thing we're trying to do with our project on Savannah's East Side is to build with SPLOST funding, and we were approved for $6.25 million in SPLOST, which has to be spent on actually building the facility, not operating it. But the Early Learning Center would be for about 110 kids from birth through age 3. We're hoping that afterwards a lot of the kids attend the Formie Center nearby at the old East Broad School. And there are a lot of challenges in doing this, including paying the teachers appropriately. That's one huge factor in early learning, is that a lot of the teachers leave. They can definitely get better opportunities in the primary and secondary schools. But we have a model through Purpose Built where we're going to have what's called a community quarterback, and part of the role is going to be to make this work, we're going to have to subsidize it considerably, and part of the responsibility will be raising subsidy funds so that people of lesser means from the neighborhood surrounding the Early Learning Center can go to the school. We think it's a great model that if we're successful at, maybe some other early learning centers in the city and around this area could adopt.
You mentioned the quality rating, and I know CETA has taken some steps to try to dedicate some money toward helping these child care and daycare centers kind of raise their game and get that quality rating up. How much do those other centers that aren't what Jeff was talking about, which is 100 and some odd kids, so the majority are not going to be necessarily in an early learning center like what Jeff is having, what needs to happen on these other places to raise the level?
Well, in my opinion, we need to have more opportunities for them to come get that type of professional learning so that they actually know what to do when they get back to their facilities, because it is costly in order to be able to provide all of that teaching and learning to the teachers. So if we're going to make Savannah-Chatham County a better place for all of our young people, then maybe as a consortium, we can all get together, come together as a collaboration, and provide some of those services. I know that Parenting University already provides several opportunities for parents to come in and get some of those essential learnings. But if all of us could come together and maybe outline some various learnings that they need to have, or some sessions that they need to have for that facility to work on that quality rating, I think that would benefit everyone.
Great segue, because these early learning centers and child care and everything, that's all fine and good, but the best teachers are the ones in the home, right? So
I'm excited that the dialogue. I'm excited about the trend of the dialogue, because, in fact, if our families aren't engaged in this process, no matter what we throw at it, it's not going to be as effective as if the parents are critically engaged in this process. And I don't mean parents have to all go out and learn calculus or become experts, but I mean the posture that owning the education of their children is theirs has to be instilled in all of the families. This is where the children are going to spend most of their time. That's not going to change. And if the parents give off an energy that they're disengaged with education, the children will feel that. And if parents feel they don't know how to navigate the resources around, well, our children are very bright and very perceptive, and they can see the weak links in the chain. So I agree that all of these things that we're talking about are wonderful, but this starts in the womb. I mean, this is the kind of conversation you have to have around the dinner table or wherever we're eating dinner these days. And parents have to feel as though they are capable to even navigate these resources. Oftentimes resources are available, but parents don't know they're available, nor are they comfortable with the navigation process. So these resources go untapped. So I'd love to talk about pre-K, pre-K, but 0 to 3 is going to be the realm of parents at to a great level. And if the parents aren't involved in that process, and what I mean by involved, I mean comfortable with assuming that the education of their child is theirs. That's what I mean. The experts are the experts, and they should be that. And if you had something you needed done, from anything from your car to your health, you would go to an expert. And I clearly, but it always pays, if you've ever had something wrong with your car, to have some idea of what it was when you came in there so that you could help the expert help you. And so that's the part that I'm so excited about, is that the local and the national conversation is pivoting to the importance of parenting, and that's what I'm talking about. But we have a long road ahead and a lot to develop.
Yeah, it's interesting because Savannah's a town with a mix of socioeconomic levels, and as Jeff was saying earlier, it's how do you help the parents and the families that are maybe have less money, that the parents are working two jobs, that they don't necessarily have time, for lack of a better word, to spend a lot of time on parenting when they're just trying to make sure that they're putting a roof over their heads and feeding them and doing that kind of thing. So when you have parents come in and work with you at Parent University, just walk us through some of the bare basics. Where do you start? What do people need to know to really kickstart?
Oh, this is a great question. This is a great what we do, and this is our secret. This doesn't go beyond here, right? But what we do is we make people comfortable with the learning process. See, it's really about comfort. There's lots of experts out there, but if you're afraid to approach a subject, if your confidence level is low, or you feel inept, well, then you don't even approach them about it. So what we make parents comfortable with is learning, is understanding that not knowing a thing does not disqualify you from your job of raising your children. You see, you have to be in charge of it. And it doesn't take long, and as a result of that, we offer a plethora of courses, because what we want the parents to do is choose the one they think they need. Because what's really important is that they embrace learning and that they think they're capable of helping their children and themselves through learning. So that's the kind of thing we teach them, and what happens is it catches, and then they take on topics that are more challenging to them, because now they're more comfortable with admitting, well, I don't know a thing, but it's okay because I know where to find the answer to a thing, and it's really kind of a behavior that we change, and not necessarily fill them up with all of the current learnings, but we try to fill them with the confidence and the competence they need to pursue learning.
Jeff, the holistic approach is something that's kind of at the heart of purpose-built, right? You're looking at promoting well-being, you're looking at quality, affordable housing, you're looking at early childhood education. How does that all come together and, in your mind, help promote learning?
So the purpose-built model, and it's in about 30 communities around the country now. We would be about the fifth in the state of Georgia. 3 of them are in the Atlanta area. It is a very holistic and comprehensive approach that, as you alluded to, it involves quality early learning through college. So the ELC would be just the start of our education pipeline. We need to build it out through past 3 years old, through primary schools and secondary schools and college opportunities. So that's one plank of it. Another is mixed income housing, and we're working with the Housing Authority of Savannah and hopefully other partners on improving mixed income opportunities through the east side. And the third thing is health and wellness, another very exciting part of our plan. We actually have a potential site which is 9 acres that we would be ground leasing from the Housing Authority across from DFAX on Wheaton Street. It's sometimes people's eyes glaze over. It's behind Randy's Barbecue, and everybody seems to know where that location is. But the Y is also looking into the feasibility of putting a new 18,000 square foot fitness facility there. So this is really just the start of our project, but if you think about it, there would be hundreds of apartments, mixed income houses, rehabbed or newly developed by the Housing Authority, surrounding an early learning center, quality rated. We'd like to be NACE rated if possible, highest quality rated for up to 110 kids, and then a fitness facility nearby. And this is only the start. What Purpose Built nationally calls the secret sauce of their method is having a community quarterback, which is a dedicated nonprofit organization that doesn't have to do all of these housing and wellness and educational things, but make sure that they're being all managed well so that they're in sync and they're delivering improved outcomes to the families in the neighborhood. Because another part of it is setting metrics for improved educational attainment, improved health, and then going back and evaluating to what extent you're meeting those metrics. So it's a very holistic, comprehensive approach, which is very exciting and, quite frankly, is something pretty new for Savannah.
Dr. Cave, I get the feeling that when you get kids into the school, that you can tell the ones that are more prepared than the others. How do you catch them up, or obviously if we do this right, then you don't have to catch them up. But in the meantime, how do you help raise them up?
Actually, we provide lots of different interventions for all of those children. They come in with varied rates of completing tasks and varied learning abilities, but you have to take the child where they are, and then you start them there and move them forward. So not to make any one particular child feel as though they're not on the same level as all the others, we start out with the basic instruction to see where everybody is. We give them lots of learning opportunities to be successful through creative play, through some handwritten works, through conversation, through language experience approaches, and all of those different ways that early learning develops, and language acquisition. We do various things that way. But one important point that we do is children cannot be ready for school if they're not healthy. So a big partnership, and I want to talk a little bit about what Jeff said, is making sure that children are ready for learning. And if children are healthy, children will be at school. So at Formie, one thing that we have done this year is we have a site-based health facility that's there, who is staffed by Curtis V. Cooper. And they're there every single day except for Friday. The children can get immunizations. Parents can make sure that they do their well visits as well as their sick visits on site. So we have seen that the children are at school more often, even if they have to come sick, because they can get that care there. So all of that has to do with preparing children to be ready for school so that they have the optimal learning environment. It's all about setting up the learning environment so children are able to be happy and healthy and ready to receive the learning, so that we don't have a lot of that differentiation in terms of learning that will occur.
I'm gonna go ahead and stay with you. And once that environment is in place, how do you develop strong critical thinking and soft skills?
So you do that with direct teaching. It's all about the types of programs that you bring in, or the types of resources that you utilize with children. So to develop those critical thinking skills is all about helping children develop at an early age mindfulness. So that's a big thing this year. It's a big thing, that whole SEL concept of getting children ready to be able to, they can't critically think if they can't emotionally think about what they're supposed to do next. So we spend a lot of time getting them ready for that through yoga exercises. It's all about focusing the mind to get ready for the learning. So the teachers engage in that, the children engage in that, as well as the parents come out. We also get them to do a lot of STEM and STEAM activities, so they're able to take a device or take a little Weebot or a robot, and they are able to learn to program that by just looking at the dots. So it's all about the types of activities, the types of resources, the types of experiences you give to children. We have a partnership with J.E. Dunn. They're going out into our courtyard, and they're getting ready to redo our entire courtyard so that our children will be able to go outside and then begin to have the opportunity to engage with the great nature of our Mother Earth, and to be able to understand how all of these things help me to be a better human being, because you teach those skills at a very young age, and you teach them how to speak, you teach them how to be respectful, you teach them how to act, how to walk and talk. Because if you teach children those core values at an early age, they may move away from them for a short period of time, but you know what? They always come back to those core values, because you embed those skills very early.
And embedding those skills again probably goes to how they're raised, right?
I just love the conversation. I could just sit here and really listen to the conversation, because we're starting to understand it. First of all, when you talk about learning, it's more than an academic exercise. You know, what good would it be a sociopath that knows 30,000 more words. I mean, what we need, what needs to happen in the household is that things like empathy and love and trust and safety and those kind of things are what the children come to school understanding and feeling a need to further nurture. And so it's just huge that our parents understand the critical nature of their engagement with their child. It has, once again, it doesn't have to do with them being the content matter expert. What it has to do is that everything their child, from the very beginning, the core of their child's values come from what they see at home. And even if we do a great job in our schools and they go back to a home which is dysfunctional or in this particular case, which is alienated from the education process for whatever reason, well, then they have to redo it. They have to refix it. They're always rebuilding. So it's just so important, and it's already been said by Dr. K very well, that what happens in the home, particularly from the preschool years, is huge, and parents have to understand that. And so, in my mind, we have to think of ways to create a culture of 0 to 3 education in our whole community, wherever you are, socioeconomically. It's got to be what we do. This is what we do: is we educate our children. And if the parent can't do it, well, then the aunt, the uncle, the neighbor, the merchant, everyone has to think about how do we educate the child, because scores in the end do not make quality people. Test scores don't make quality people. You have to have these other, you call them soft skills, but they're associated with some other kinds of things that make a quality person. And in the end, if you don't have those things, what good does it do if you can beat a computer at chess?
That's interesting, because I imagine a large part of your challenge with Parent University is they come in and they don't know. So you're raising awareness, you're teaching them. The other part of that is you got to retrain some people, right? And there's an old saying that says it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. How does that process work? How do you go about it? How does it work?
Well, make sure everybody else gets time, because that could be our topic. But there's one of the things we do is we go to many locations, because we don't want to cubbyhole what people think this is, which is a very difficult process to ward off. Because what Parent University is the upliftment of parents about the whole learning process. And it doesn't matter if they come from a socio-economically challenged strata. It matters if they understand their role in their child's edification. That's what's important. So what we do is we create a friendly, user-friendly, celebratory environment, which allows them a lot of choice in what they learn, and we do a lot of rewarding for the behavior that we're looking for. We do a lot of rewarding for that, and we tell them, or remind them constantly of their role in this endeavor of changing our community. It's there. It's not for the schools to do. See, it's not a passive role. It's a partnership. It's a partnership with everybody in the community to create our next generation. And parents of children are the primary stakeholders. So that's what we continuously remind our parents of. And at the same time, we go to about, 10 different schools, because we want parents to walk the halls in all the schools and realize that even if the building looks different, it's the same. You see, so we want them to become confident and competent that they can navigate these processes. We also bring vendors in, like has been mentioned, Curtis V. Cooper, the Boy Scouts, various people from the school system, and from even people that have jobs to offer. We bring all these people in so that they can talk to parents about issues that the parents want to talk about privately as like vendors. So we just create what we call a county fair of learning. So the parents can walk around, they can either go in a class, they can go talk to a vendor, and ultimately what we want them to become is comfortable with the learning and the navigating process.
Jeff, I can only imagine that in the 2 decades that Purpose Built has been around, they've done a lot of experimentation. They've probably tried to pull some best practices. And looking into what they've done, what is their approach on critical thinking skills, soft skills? What have they found that works?
I can answer that maybe in a more general way. I think their focus is on transforming neighborhoods. We're talking, our goal is to transform some of the East Side neighborhoods, and I think their belief out of a lot of research and history is that is the natural level to do it. And unfortunately, a lot of services are not set up on a neighborhood level. They're set up on a city level or a county level. We're talking about bringing a myriad of services simultaneously to bear on a neighborhood level. And I think kind of the philosophy is that a purpose-built neighborhood should be a healthy and mixed-income neighborhood where people, it's not about gentrifying. That's certainly not the goal. It's about having people of a variety of different circumstances living in the neighborhood, so kids and families are exposed to people of a variety of different economic means and a variety of jobs, and that's felt that that's the best learning environment, and that some of this learning in terms of soft skills and such will really come about naturally by people just being part of a very diverse and mixed neighborhood.
Dr. Cave, I'm going to switch topics here a little bit and talk about metrics are a big deal, especially in our public schools, and the state obviously is making some moves now. We're not exactly sure where all they're going to go with it, but one stat that will always be pretty relevant is the dropout rate. And when you talk about early childhood education, you are looking to adulthood, right? You're looking to make productive citizens from early on. How does that early childhood education, how does getting kids reading on third grade level when they're supposed to be reading on a third grade level, how does that impact the dropout rate? And then not only the dropout rate, if you take care of the dropout rate, then you start looking at graduation rate and then college degree rate and so on and so forth, right?
All of it relates because we know research tells us that if children are on grade level by grade level, if they're on reading grade level by grade 3, then they are more likely to stay in school and not drop out of school. So there are various factors that go into play with that. It's all about the education they receive up until that grade level. So that's why beginning at the womb is so very, very important, making sure that their parents have the resources and materials that they need, the educational preparation there, as well as making sure that we educate them when they get to us at age 4 years of age, so that we're giving them every opportunity to be successful. Getting on grade level by grade 3, for some children that can be a very difficult task. It can be a very daunting task sometimes because the academic vocabulary is very different in various homes. All children don't come to school at the reading at the same grade level. All children don't come to school with the same language acquisition skills as others. So it's about the types of activities that you provide to them so that they can get on grade level, so that we impact grade 4, 5, and on through high school. Because once a child gets out of elementary school and they really get into that core content in middle school and high school, then the reading level changes tremendously. And if they cannot read on grade 3 and have a variety of academic vocabulary terms and understanding, it's going to be very difficult for them. So we have to spend an enormous amount of time making sure that we expose them to books, get as many books in the home, expose them to language so that they not only see language, they hear language, they can read language, and when I mean language, I mean all kinds of reading material, because language comes through all of those types of things. And one thing we often forget is about getting on grade level by grade 3. We forget that writing experience that children need to have, because children, once they learn to be able to write something, then more than likely if they can write something, they can read something. So you have to be able to expose them to a variety so that they're able to stay in college, or they're able to go to the workforce, or they're able to stay in high school, so that they can get to all of those different places that they want to go to in life.
It's interesting because 2 of our state legislators have some legislation pending now that would change the dropout age, I believe, from 16 to 17. But if all you're doing is changing the dropout age, what are you really accomplishing? What do you all think about getting these kids reading earlier? How can that make a difference?
Well, we have, there's a lot of ELCs out here these days. We as well have, as part of our parent university structure, what we call early learning college. And it was driven by the reflections of our parents that said a lot of the things that we were studying in our parent university environment was kind of remedial, because if they had known the importance of early learning, they would have done things differently. And so what we ended up doing is narrowing down some of our offerings to early learning. And so, and of course, all the data that it's constantly invoked these days about the brain development says that if a child has a so many 1,000-word advantage on its peers, that it never loses that advantage throughout life. I mean, and so once again, it becomes the realm of the parent. I mean, unless this parent has enough resource to send their child to the kind of school that can raise their vocabulary, the parent has to play a part in that. So some parents say, well, how do we do that? Well, that's what we have set up the Early Learning College to do, to help. One of the things that was invoked pretty much all of our sessions, we give away books, all kind of books that the parents can choose, so that they can become comfortable with showing the children the reading exercise. When I was coming up, I don't know if my parents read to me every day, but this guy used to sit in the living room of my house, and I know he was there because the newspaper was always open. He was in this chair.
God bless him.
And when I realized that I want to be that guy, and see, that was my dad. I want to be that guy that reads that newspaper all the time. And so that was, in my life, that was my motivation for wanting to know how to read, to please my dad. So we want parents to be creative and thinking of ways to help their child become motivated to learn. So rather that's reading to them. If they're not comfortable with that, then model the behavior in some way, and also find out what's available to them in the community to help that happen. Because once again, if you have a slow start, you're going to spend a good part of your life remediating, if in fact you ever can make up the difference.
Jeff, I'm sure with the early learning centers, there's a lot of different methods and modes for how they go about encouraging reading. What have you learned about on that front?
I'm a little bit sheepish being on this panel with Mike and Dr. K, because my background is not in education, and we're going to actually form a group to really kind of decide on what the best curriculum is. And there's some fantastic programs out there, but I could not agree with him more about the significance of reading and vocabulary development in the early years. I think the figure is that 60 to 80% of brain development takes place by age 3. And there's a famous book that came out a few years ago. I think the exact numbers have been somewhat disputed, but called 30 Million Words. And this is the number of words, more words that kids in affluent families hear than their lesser, gifted peers growing up from their parents. So it just, and of course this is before you're in the schools. So and I know Mike is taking on this charge, is giving the parents the tool to enrich their kids when they're in the home setting, so that they hear that they hear the vocabulary and they develop the vocabulary by the time they're getting into more formal learning opportunities. And and also being in some of these intellectually rich and loving environments can also play a crucial role in kids once they are exposed to toxic environments. Kids who in a more flexible environment have an ability to adapt more to toxic situations which may occur versus children who do not grow up in such a rich, culturally and linguistically rich environment.
Go ahead, I know you're confident.
I'm just taking my notes. Here's something that came out in the AJC today, because it's concerned about the cuts that are being proposed at the state level to early childhood education, mental health, to make up budget deficits. But the problem is these could lead to greater deficits in education and the school readiness that we're talking about. But one of the things this piece mentioned was research shows that the first 2,000 days of a child's life, from the time they are born to when they enter kindergarten, or when the most rapid brain development occurs. It's a time when 1 million synapses are created every second, and the basic architecture of the brain is formed, when critically important life skills such as concentration and impulse control are formed. So when we talk about the behavioral problems that children have when they're coming into schools and things like that, it's because those synapses haven't been formed in that early childhood. But one of the things I noticed when I came to FORME, and it was interesting because there was a little girl, this totally impromptu, this little girl runs up, she's about 4 years old, and she comes straight to the principal and she says, "I have a test and I'm really nervous. Is there a room I can go sit in by myself to just calm down?" And the fact that she could ask that, I didn't know that before. I was a basket case. But the fact that she could kind of do that, and then I saw a couple of other children sort of doing these poses before they were about to take a test. And I can't. It was the one where they stand and their hands are their prayer, kind of a prayer pose. And then one girl goes, "Yep, I'm ready now," like that. So I mean, seeing that in process is just as an observer. I was like, we need more of that. And I think we have a deficit of 500 seats, basically to fund 500 seats for early childhood education in Chatham County. And that I was also reading something today from the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, which is a nonpartisan nonprofit. And they've done a study that said there's lottery money that's on the table that hasn't been used. I'm like, why isn't it being used for something like this? If we understand that this is such a valuable investment, why aren't we investing those dollars that are sitting there into something like this, and then in the communities that need it the most?
Did more in early learning, you would be saving the expenses that are spent further down the line in terms of prison, in terms of finding more worthwhile jobs for people. The figures I have here, and this is from a source called NoSmallMatter.com. They just put out a great documentary, which I think was shown in town last week. Unfortunately, I couldn't see it, but anybody can go online and see a really interesting documentary about the significance of early learning. But they claim that for every dollar that's invested in quality early learning, benefits society between $4 and $13 per child. So to say that there's a budgetary issue with this, it's really the other way. We should be investing more to save more money downstream, and to allow more people to live fully worthwhile lives.
And I think one way that you can make that case at a state level is when you look at incarceration rates. In Savannah, we have the highest number of in court-involved youth in the state. So when you look at that, then you have to back it up. You can't sit there and say, okay, everything we have to do is invest in punitive measures or punishment measures. We need to be investing in the early childhood, because that's where you make the transformational change in a generation.
That's why, and completely right. This is why I humbly submit that there must be more investment in the parent training. I've been to what we call third world countries, where the average child speaks 3 languages. The average child speaks 3 languages fluently, including English, better than me. Okay, so this is because in those early years, when that 2,000 days, when that brain was forming, they were hearing multiple languages, could differentiate between the two, and then who were they hearing it from? They were hearing it from their parents. They were hearing it from their families. The families have to become engaged in this learning process, and that's what will morph the community and allow all of our other endeavors to really flourish when the families can support them.
Catch with all this, at least on a public standpoint, is funding, right? And it's the whole idea of how much money is available. Obviously, there's a lot of angst here in Savannah every time there's talk of a millage rate increase, and where's this money going, where's that money going. Now there's talk at the state level of expanding gambling and maybe using that money for Hope scholarships or on the other end with the lottery. In a dream situation, is it pre-K 3 for everybody in the county, or is that just too simplistic? If you had your druthers, what would you do if you had a blank check, I guess?
A blank check, I would definitely want pre-K 3 for everyone, but if we can't do that, at least pre-K 4 for everyone. You know, we weren't able to seat, I think, over 500 children this year in our school district because of the fact that there's limited space. We have to think about the budgeting that it's involved in terms of paying all of the teachers, because the state will give you the classes, but they only give you a certain portion of the money, so we have to fund the rest. And through Dr. Levette's vision, we have done a remarkable job in terms of expanding our offerings to our children. We'd like to have an early learning center in all the corridors of our community, of our state, our county, excuse me. But with the funding being as limited as it is, we have to take small steps and be able to find that available space and be able to build those facilities for our children.
I'm going to ask you guys the same question, but before I do that, anybody in the audience that has some questions for the panelists, go ahead and get them ready, because we're going with this question. We're going to throw it out to you all and let you ask what you want to know before we wrap up. So, I have pens available. She has pens available. Michael, blank check. What do you do?
Well, I guess it's not much of a leap for, I would, if there was a blank check, I would make early learning for parenting something that's available to all the parents that are interested, with the caveat that we would create something that is marketable, something that's attractive to parents in general. And it may look a little different than what we currently have, but then we would spend enough money to find what a attractive model for early learning on the parenting aspect, that we would find that, and they would spend the money to make it work.
And I would generally agree with that, with the caveat that sufficient funds really need to be there to support sustainable wages for people who are early learning teachers, which is really a shortcoming that's in many communities throughout the country. And I think also in high poverty neighborhoods, I think, could sustainable wages be provided, that would be a great employment track for a lot of people living in those neighborhoods. They're doing it already. They're raising their families, and I think it's a great job which can lead to other jobs. So I think, too often the focus isn't on supporting the providers adequately. And if, if whatever the figure is, 60%, 80% of brain development and all, whereas we can, as a society, better put adequate, sufficient resources to get kids and their families started on the right foot. I just don't think there's any place where there's more of a payback than in early learning.
Yeah, certainly. Long game. You're absolutely right. So, Amy, I know you lived this for a while. If you had a blank check, what would you do?
Well, I agree that it's the sustainable wages for the teachers. I believe that if you invested it in the early childhood education, I think though it's not necessarily a blank check. I think we need to continue. I think we really need a complete mindset change. When we look at nations that have excelled back in the 60s and 70s, like Finland, Sweden, places like that, determined that their greatest source of economic strength would be if they invested in education. And we tend to think success is simply in sort of the American mindset that it's how much you make financially or what size house you have and things like that. Whereas they saw that if you invest in education and create a whole person, then when you've done that, you create a nation that can take care of itself, does problem solve, and so I think when we sit there and talk about, are we going to invest in more prisons? Are we going to invest in more police? What we've done is shortchanged ourselves, because we need to take that money that we would invest in that and put it toward the early childhood education. I don't think we need a blank check. I think we need a shift in our priorities and a shift in a people-centric policy. And when you put people at the center of policies, you change the way that you're funding, and you actually spend less money because you've made it much more targeted to how do I invest in a person rather than how do I invest in a system.
Asha, if you got some questions, bring them on up.
The superintendent says hello.
The superintendent is watching, so everybody just got nervous, right?
You are Adam.
All right. So we have a question from Denise. Thanks for coming, Denise. We have an aging population with lonely seniors. We also have challenges with after-school boredom of teens. What are your thoughts about pairing our older adults and our teens in reading to the littlest ones?
I can answer that one.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, we're happy to say that we're doing some of that already. We have a group, we have our grandparenting group who comes into the Forming Center, because we have the foster grandparenting program there in conjunction with, in collaboration with EOA, because we have the 3-year-olds there as well, so they get the opportunity to come in and read to our children. Well, we also have another group of retired individuals called the Love Mentors who also come in and they read to all of the children all over the district, and we focus in on that. And we're also having something else called our Rotary Read-In, where all of the Rotary comes in and they spend an entire day reading to all of our children. So we're doing lots of those things already, but the more the merrier. The more children can hear reading and the more children can be involved with an adult that reads, the better they're going to be, that we're going to instill in them a love for reading and a love for books.
I have a feeling some of those seniors probably volunteer with your group and help guide some of these parents, right?
Absolutely. We have a group, the 100, it's a group of ladies from Skidaway Island. They bring literally a truckload of books to our events, like every 3 or 4 events, and we get rid of all of the books. The parents literally take all of those books home with them, and the children also get a chance to come and get some books. Reading is what we do. We also give books away to the children, but it really goes back to what Amy is saying. It's really about building community. That's what this really is. And if community doesn't have the consciousness that everybody's in the educational process, well, then you have this division. And even if you have well-performing kids, well, then you have lonely adults, and you have separation, and you have emotional anxiety. So it really is everybody in the community getting involved in the learning process.
How important is that community buy-in to what Purpose Built does, Jeff?
Critically important. We're about transforming neighborhoods and neighborhood revitalization, and you can't revitalize the neighborhood if you don't have the neighborhood, behind you, and that takes a lot of work in some communities. And quite frankly, we have a long way to go with our project, where we really have not done as much outreach as we should yet to the neighborhoods, because in the particular neighborhoods we're looking at, they've been promised many things over the years, a lot of which has not transpired. So we kind of wanted to wait. Consciously, we decided to wait until we had something tangible that we could talk about. Now that we have the SPLOST allocation for the Early Learning Center, we are hopeful, it's viable, that there will be a new Y downtown. We are ready to engage the neighborhood in a much greater sense than we have today. We've done some, but we need to do a lot more. And including a part of the purpose built is really engaging the neighborhood to come up with the name or the branding of the program. We want to have a charrette or something like that to get the neighborhood residents together, where they come up with a name, whether it's heritage or otherwise, that they come up with a name for this project that really resonates with them and, with folks who've been brought up in these communities for many years. So it is a absolutely critical aspect of Purpose Built.
And those older populations, they're the ones that they know everybody, right? They know the neighborhood. People look up to them. They can really kind of be a linchpin for you.
Absolutely.
Senior communities that are being built in our footprint, and we want to involve them in every way. There's some great case examples of early learning, hybrid early learning, and senior programs where, they do their own thing through parts of the day, but then they come together at other points in the day, and it's great. It's not great for one group; it's great for both groups. And, and maybe with the teens and tweens, maybe with computer skills and all for some of our seniors, they can learn the life lessons from some of the seniors, and maybe the kids can help the seniors with some of their computer skills.
Education kids probably know quite a bit more. Right?
Know it better than I do, that's for sure.
Other question comes from Jimmy and Katie, who are kind enough to come by and support us today, and I think it's for you, Michael, and it's, how can parents get access to education about what parent you offer? So this is something.
Oh my! Thank you. I put them in the crowd strategically. See me after this, but we have a website, parentuniversitysav.org, or where you can go. Right now, we have a website on the Savannah-Chatham County. We have a presence on the Savannah-Chatham County Public School site, but really parentuniversitysav.org. And of course, I won't let you get out of here before you have my card.
And what is the relationship between the schools and between Parent University?
Well, in our early years, we thought it was wise to and we still think it's wise to have a presence on the school system. We never started Parent University until the school system was a partner with us. And of course, that was back in 2000 when I was a much younger man. I had an afro at that time. And but it's about collaboration. See, this is not a thing one that belongs to me or belongs to one group. We always perceive this as a community collaboration, because that's really what this is about. If it's only segmented, well, then it's going to collapse. So we've always just been about building as much community as possible around this topic so that eventually it would belong to the community.
Well, I've stumbled through another one of these. Thanks to all of you for helping me. And before I let everybody go, I got to do the requisite promotion, and it's that we love doing these public forums, but they're a small part of what we do at Savannah Morning News. If you want more engaging local news and content, subscribe to the Savannah Morning News, a digital subscription, incredible value. It's free for the first month, just $7.99 a month for a year. After that, go to savannahnow.com/digital only offer to take advantage of that. We also do offer podcasts with the biggest newsmakers in Savannah. Take out your phones now. A few of you got your phones out. Look for The Commute with That Savannah Opinion and Savannah Difference Makers. Those are our two regular podcasts, and go ahead and subscribe. They're free. And we'll talk a lot about education, and I think maybe you might see some of these panelists on those podcasts here soon. So thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Dr. Cave. Thank you, Amy. And
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back in March. What's the date on that, Asha?
March.
She doesn't know either. So March 25th, our next Brews and Views will be at Service Brewing down on Indian Street, and the topic is business in Savannah, downtown business?
Downtown business.
Downtown business. You can see that I'm glad I have these folks with me to kind of keep me on the straight and narrow. So thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for watching on Facebook Live, and we'll talk to you again in March.